we've really seen the material from its very beginning as a reclaimed bit of timber that's destined to be burnt, all the way to this process where we're happy to kind of give it another life and let it sort of live again in that sense.
But it's telling of the time that it takes to build it, that we're working with a living material and a reclaimed material, that it's impossible to design full intention into a material that you can't control what you're going to get. You have to work with what is in front of you, and that requires as designers, as architects, to be there and to feel the material, to measure it and to work with it and to take the time that it needs. But ultimately going forward in our industry and with the materials that we need to start sourcing, I think that's something that architects have to learn to live with and to take a bit more time to do things in order to do it properly and with the right kind of material.
It's been very much a kind of a negotiation between the design in the beginning and then the material that we found. And at every, there's been an iterative cycle of kind of development and adjustment on both sides. So seeing what material we have available, seeing how that maps onto the design that we've kind of wanted to express and convey, and how each gets adjusted. Can we get more material? Can we rearrange the material that we have? Can we adapt the design without losing sight of its initial goals? It's been this constant kind of like slow convergence to some sort of to the final actual build thing.
And I think we all work in academia and we work in architecture and in delivery. So this project has been very much of that cycle, that there's ideas that exist within academia and we're trying to bring them directly into the industry. And that hits a lot of friction. It's a challenging thing to do. This has been amazing. It's supported by the Copenhagen Biennial, and we've obviously had the time to build it. But in a commercial world, that's a much harder thing to do. So this is a kind of microcosm that's allowed us to kind of check ourselves and to then take that back into practice.
Design and execution, and we are learning so much in the process and act of building it that I think we didn't really understand at the beginning when we started conceptualizing or 3D modeling. The project's quite rough, but I think that's also the beauty and the magic of it. It's very much a case study, and the pieces of timber, they have an innate charm to it. I think the way that even the technique and the way that how it's being put together is becoming quite charming in the way that we're thinking about it and cutting pieces by hand. Today we were trimming with an axe, it's very kind of quite back to basics, which is quite an amazing thing to start off so digitally and then end up being very, very rudimentary. So it's been a really beautiful and rewarding process to be a part of.
But as such, it has been kind of a fleshing out process, hitting a lot of the bumps as well along the way, and finding out all of a sudden, the first time all the wood was delivered to us, we were like, wow, there's pallets and pallets and 14 cubic meters of wood in front of us. It's a lot of material just to kind of tackle ourselves in a small team. So there was a lot of kind of getting to know what does it mean to actually work with that kind of material and that kind of in these kind of processes. But we really hope that it's lots of learnings, that we can kind of carry that forward and just develop more methods and better methods of working with variable material. I think a lot of as we've heard in many other places, a lot of material we need is already in buildings or somehow existing. We need techniques to be able to kind of now pull it out and reuse it in better ways. So I think that's a big driving factor. It's what we're looking at the Academy. It's what we're looking at Umtre as well. How do we kind of make more circular solutions? How do we drive the circular economy through developing methods of and solutions for better use? And so this has been a very, at times painful, at times very challenging, but ultimately just very, very educational and thought-provoking process for us. So once again, we're super grateful for the forum, the festival, and Browscon
for our wider team who have been incredibly accommodating to a really difficult, challenging, also difficult.
And for agreeing to go, to follow the crazy idea all through its implementation. So it requires a lot of bravery.
But we're a group of London-based architects, and we do projects through to delivery. And we are old friends with Tom. We did our masters together at the Bartlett in London, so we know each other quite well and for quite a long time.
Yeah, it was really nice to work with each other. I'm an architect and researcher. I've been at the Royal Danish Academy for the past 10 years since my PhD. Now I also work for a company called Umtre in Norway, which is about developing circular solutions for timber.
extrusion is that when we start to mix it with fibers, the viscosity of the material has to be different. The relationship between the clay, which we know quite well, and the fibers is very sensitive because the moisture reaction between the two is actually quite complex. So we have broken a ton of different profiles in this process the last month, but arriving to what is quite a simple geometry, but a geometry in which we can keep investigating. Because now we'll be standing here for at least 2 months, and we will keep observing how does it behave when it's exposed to the weather during the autumn. And I don't know if you will get a little bit dirty if you take, but you can get a sense of the weight. So you can say, of course, this comes also from a cultural point of view, in which it's still moist. So cultural point of view, where you can see the brickwork around us, where there's a human laying the brick and then the mortar. In this case, this has a scalar relationship to a size that a human body can handle.
And in such kind of construction, we emphasize that we have this roughness, earth-like expression from clay. You see it's very rough, and then we have this very linear, simple way of wood construction. So it has this playfulness, which maybe I could say this about that we explored this way of extrusion, what Isak just mentioned about how it soaks all the water out of the wet clay when we mix it. So the clay becomes so hard, as you mentioned, it breaks the profiles in the machinery. And what is interesting then to find the right balance between how wet the clay should be and the hay, and how long time do you need to wait until you actually start the production of these. Before you should start it quite quickly, otherwise it becomes too hard and then it will break the profile. So that is also a kind of experience we have gained through this. Right?
So the project is small, but we are tracking a lot of, we're doing a lot of documentation of this. You can say for scaling up at another point. And some of the things you can see, there's a line here, and each one actually should have 3 lines, because of course when you have something with a hole in, there needs to be another form. So just the fact that when you press the material through, the formwork that creates a circle, actually, the material has to come around it. And that is quite normally not a big problem, but when we start to have fibers, they will start to build up inside the machine. So there's a lot of these things that are quite banal in a way, but actually very non-trivial and complex to understand on a material level, on a geometry, and a fabrication level at the same time. Now you talk a little about the rhythmic pattern, so it's organized in a way, of course, that it has this kind of composition like we see in also bonded work, and all the elements are placed in the same angle, so that they will be more or less transparent depending on how you look around it, okay? Then you can see there's cut in the top, so it's prepared for pitch roof. So we can, well, we will leave it now for some weeks just to see how will it deteriorate or decompose or not, based upon the first weeks here of exposure to rain and wind. Then we can mount the roof, and then we can do another set of observations. And they will be qualitative observations, there will be photographic registrations, and we have some sensors we will mount to measure the moisture content of the structure. So it's an ongoing research project that we keep exploring and tracking. The material comes from Wienerberger. This is a big, you know, Wienerberger, yeah. So they are now also in Denmark. They are buying up the Danish brickyards. Yes. So the material is local, and the material is actually a little bit more raw than what we typically will get as clay. It's not processed as much. Normally they drive it through these mills to actually get it to a granular size. This is less processed, more raw in its material, which also influences the flow when we control the extrusion process.
It's very, the topic there was sustainability in architecture, so we have built it with only one construction and only cladding on one side, either where we have the dark space inside, we have the cladding outside, and where we have the light spaces, we have the linen inside. And it's of course, we take it apart when we move it, and not in all the pieces, but so it's built as disassembling and moving. Yeah, but let's go in and take time to adapt to both darkness but also lightness. Here we can get from having channeled down. The surfaces here is a lime paint, and lime paint is small crystals, which is super good at reflecting and create diffuse light. Even if the sun sometimes look in, because the channel is like deep, it will never come in here. So whatever weather it's outside, this space will have this ambient, feel good atmosphere. But what you also perhaps experience is that there's not that much shadow. So everything is a little bit two-dimensional. So you cannot get everything in one kind of daylight. Mm-hmm. So that's, and here we have separated different kind of typology of daylight. And this is where we talk about reflected, diffuse skylight. Yeah. Questions? Yeah. But when we have our students in here, they have never looked at daylight in the professional way when they start in their education as architect or designer. So what we want them to learn here is to see how little light can actually enlighten big space. Mm-hmm. So the opening up there is very small, and if you just have a good channel to spread it down, you can actually, with a very little hole, create quite a lot of light. What we also experience when we move out and next is that the adaptation, the time we are going to use for adapt from very light to darkness afterwards, and then we went into a new light room. So the younger you are, the faster you can adapt. I'm not good at that because I'm in my last part of my life. So when I have students in here, I say, oh, when I go out there, I say, I can't see anything. But I know it's this direction, so let's go. So it's also about that, and also how you, with very simple angles, can actually create a quite interesting architectural space. So that is the story about this. You can also, Velux also have some kind of equipment where they actually, in tubes, can channel daylight a long distance. We don't have that in our school, but at Cutting Design School, I know that they have an example on how long you can channel light through a tube or something.
It was a bit creepy, yeah, because it took so long. And then it's also because
only because of the color of the wall. It's also because you only get 20% of the light when you have it from side. So therefore, every skylight is a super effective light source. But we have the 5 stories high houses or more, then it can be quite difficult to get it. Now we have bluish color of the light, and you can see in the shadow quite blue. Our skin is not having that same color. And 10 minutes ago we have actually sun in here, and so you can see how the wood would glow. What we want to show here is both that when you have a light from the side, it's directed, have a direction into the space, and therefore you will be able to see the shadow in the surfaces even more compared to the other room. So here you actually have a shadow side and a light side, also on furniture. So, and that we do need for be able to understand form. So if you want to exhibit something, organic form, you can use skylight, but you need direct skylight as well to be able to recognize the form. So, yeah, and here, as you see, we have some furniture because we also have a little play with the students, because we say, okay, put your chair where you want to be in the space. And some is putting themselves very close to a lot of light, and some are hiding themselves in the corner. And we discuss, because every person has a preferences to where to be, and that is why it's so difficult to make light for offices or where many people are gathering together, because we all have a different approach to light. So when we talk about how to create quality in daylight and in space, the best quality is where we can actually adjust it and also adjust where to sit. And that is super complicated when we talk about architecture, because we have this office and you have to sit there. So it's some of the things we discuss with our students so they can be aware of flexibility, ability to move themselves, avoid computer controlled light situation where the blinds are going up and down depending on how the energy or sun or whatever. But if you can do it yourself, it's much better. So that's what we also discuss here. And we also discuss too much light. So when we talk about daylight quality, it's not about how much we have, but how we use it. At the first, when it was sited in the middle of Copenhagen, we have a big tree up there. So we have this flickering leaves and the shadows in all the space, and it was super beautiful. Here it's super even and perhaps a little bit annoying. At least when we don't have the sun to create contrast in here. Next spring we will move it to forest or a park where we can put it between trees. So here it's very blues and grays the surrounding, but now we see what happens when we put it into nature. Also the direction of, here we have the vertical, and when the sun is shining, it's really black and white lined. So here it gives the space some kind of measuring by the horizontal lines as well.